Heyo, you're listening to Toasted Time, where I cook your time with some Reddit stories. Right now, you're being toasted with some r/petty revenge, where we find out why someone finally put their foot down on their spoiled sister's bad behavior and stood up to their parents. This story is at least a decade old, but it's still one of my most satisfying petty revenge stories. When I was, then a 19 male, was home for the summer from college, my sister, then 17 female, was reveling in being the only child in the house. My sister is the baby of the family and acts like it. We generally get along, but she could occasionally be a spoiled brat. I am the opposite of my sister. For most of my childhood, I was a bit of a doormat. Classic middle child, very well behaved and under the radar. I didn't fight back much, did as I was told, and generally behaved. The biggest shakeup I brought to the family was when I came out as gay at 17. No one was really bothered by it, and my family is generally pretty supportive. Still, it was a difficult thing to process, and I'm glad I got to the point I have today. This is relevant to the story. Now, at the time, I was a much better and more responsible driver than my sister. And as a condition for staying at home for the summer rent-free, my parents would occasionally ask me to drive my sister to and from places that they didn't want her driving, usually longer distances or on the highway. For the most part, I did not mind. I love my sister, and we generally get along very well. But, like I said, she can occasionally be a real brat and has trouble when things don't go her way. One night, my sister had gotten tickets to attend a concert with a boy she liked. As my aunt and uncle were in town, and my parents wanted to spend the afternoon having a few glasses of wine out on the patio, they asked me if I would be okay driving my sister to the concert that evening. I accepted and figured that was that. My sister and cousins decided they wanted to look at some new outfits and asked me to drive with them to the mall. Being the good brother/cousin I was, I piled them into my car and took them to the mall. All was well until my sister decided I was getting on her nerves over something and we got into an argument. Wasn't a big deal until my sister, visibly annoyed, rolled her eyes and said, "You don't have to be such a..." Whoa, that's a word. F-A-G. Those are the only three letters I'm saying. About it. You don't have to be such an F-A-G about it. I hope YouTube's okay with that. I saw red. I had been called this word before and have been able to shrug it off. But from my own family, I was not going to take it. I could have yelled, argued more, or even stooped to her level, but it suddenly came over me what I was going to do. It was simple. I wasn't going to drive her to the concert. I told her as much, and she smirked to tell me, "Yeah, right, like mom and dad are going to be okay with that." Now, when we got home, I went to my parents, explained what happened, and let them know I would not be driving her to the concert. And to my complete lack of surprise, they took her side and explained to me. They understood I was upset, but that I would still need to take her to the concert. My sister's smug look was all I needed. No, was all I said. My parents seemed confused and then explained that this was not an option. I simply said, "You cannot make me. I do not care what you do. I will not drive her." Years of resentment over having to be the good sibling finally spilled out, and I simply said no. My parents, a few glasses of wine deep, tried everything. They threatened to ground me, yelled at me, threatened to take my things, got in my face, and I held my ground. I told them I would take any punishment they wanted, but no one could force me to drive her. At one point, I even looked my father in the eye and said, "Tell me it's okay for her to call me an F-A-G. Tell me it's okay for anyone to do that." And my parents didn't know what to do. They were too drunk to drive, and it was too late to ask anyone else. My sister refused to apologize, but as we got closer to the time we had to leave, I could tell she was starting to panic. The rage on her face was building up, and it was the sweetest revenge I could ask for. For once, She wasn't gonna get her way, and there was nothing she could do about it. Nothing would make me do it. This was the hill I would die on. My sister ended up missing more than half of the show and cried the whole night. It's what she deserved. As for me, my parents never even ended up punishing me. Maybe they were too stunned to do anything, or more likely saw that I was right. But from that point on, I had no problem setting boundaries as needed. I could be kind, but I wasn't going to be my family's doormat. Well, that was an interesting story. I did not expect the FAG word to come out. That was so out of left field. I don't get it. Mans is gay for so many years, and then all of a sudden they're like, and then all of a sudden she's like, all right, time to drop the bomb. It's like, what? Why? Anywho. And now, on to the next revenge. Got bullied for years, only to end up more popular than my bully. I was a very cringe, dorky kid, a big reader, into sci-fi, fantasy, loved old movies and music, just generally too enthusiastic about the wrong things. Didn't help that my family was too broke to keep up with trends, and to top it off, I was an undiagnosed little ADHD weirdo with not great social skills. In middle school, my longtime best friend decided being friends with me was social jump-off-bridge phenomena. They were very preoccupied with fitting in, so I became a liability in her eyes. Instead of spurning me altogether, she'd let me tag along, but began to bully the hell out of me on a regular basis. Anytime I gushed about my interests, this girl would make a disgusted face, then pointedly look to other kids like, okay, weird, for a cheap laugh. Sometimes she'd begin taunting me in front of a whole classroom about not having any friends. I'd angrily insist I had friends, only for her to sneer, name one friend. I'd scan the faces around me, including hers, knowing from excuses that if I named any of them, they'd yell, "Ew, you actually thought we were friends?" and laugh in my face. I'd get stood up as a joke, I'd get ditched, I'd get dogpiled at sleepovers. All the classics, and all spearheaded by my former best friend. Let's call her FBF, former best friend. However, I simply did not have the self-esteem to stand up to her or ditch her. I just took it. I thought I deserved it. And that was about 3 to 4 years of this. Then we hit high school. One of the girls my former best friend began to hang with had an older brother who was a member of the cool older alt kid clique. So when he allowed us all to tag along with him to a local concert one night, we ended up being introduced to his friends. I remember it clearly. I was trying to sell my FBF on the old Cary Grant film, Arsenic and Old Lace. And just as FBF began to ridicule me, one of the older girls whirled around to exclaim, "Oh, I love that movie!" Within 10 minutes of arriving, I shifted from standing with my former friend group to the older cool kid group. Turns out we had a lot in common, and it felt incredible finally meeting people who shared my interests. Then, I looked back at FBF and found her seething across the room. She was baffled. Why did the people she wanted to impress prefer someone like me over herself? It turns out cool older alt kids were also cringy dorks. They just happened to pull it off by framing it as being interesting and creative. And within 3 months of starting high school, I barely associated with my former bullies. I was too busy going to shows, playing D&D, thrifting, and meeting all sorts of new people at parties. A few times early on, FBF pressured me into bringing her along to social events with my new friends. But people were always very underwhelmed by her. I'm sure it didn't help that most of them knew her reputation as a mean girl by then. Dang, wonder who told them. But this frustrated FBF to no end. Every now and again, I'd hear through the grapevine that FBF was dogging about me to anyone who'd listen. She thinks she's hot, but she's not. I have no idea why those people even like her. What do they even see in her? It's always catching me off guard, like, you're this worked up over me just living my life. That's weird. I don't even think about you. Ironically, FBF ended up being something of a forgettable nobody in high school. She wasn't particularly interesting, funny, nice, or smart. She started adopting some of the very same interests she bullied me for liking and pretending she'd always been into them. It really didn't achieve much. I think people could sense it was performative. She's always too busy trying to chase being cool to realize other people value authenticity above all else. It was a pretty nice lesson. Your sense of humor, taste in music, etc. might be considered cringe by one person, but they might make you stand out to another. It's all subjective. At the end of the day, though, being a nasty bully isn't going to endear you to people. This is kind of interesting, but we are now on to the final petty of petty stories. We have Neighbor Karen Gets Evicted. And to start off, OP lists like some information about the place that they live in, but I'm going to cut that out. If you want, you can pause the video, look at it, do whatever you want. Anywho, continuing on, we got a new neighbor one day, but didn't meet her until a couple weeks after she'd moved in. We'll call her Karen. She's mid-late 50s, skinny, and has cats. Lots of cats indeed. We can see them in the windows. But our meeting went as such. One day, we're out washing our cars in the front yard, me, the girlfriend, and your kid. The hose wouldn't reach the driveway, and I also have a pair of motorcycles that I'm washing too. They will be important later. We're having a fun afternoon in the sun, playing with the hose, you know the scene, all kinds of cute and happy. But this is when our new neighbor comes home. Karen drives along the driveway, parks in the garage, and walks up the sidewalk where we are. We politely introduce ourselves and even joke that if she pulls her car up here, we'd wash it too. She all but ignores us and walks straight to her door. We shrug it off. But then she returns and goes straight vapor lock, setting the mood for the rest of the year. She starts nagging in an angry, almost screaming tone that she doesn't want us on her half of the yard. We can't be on her half, which included the sidewalk since it went through her half of the front yard. We need to get off her side of the yard since the sidewalk was on her half. It was hers and we couldn't use it. We would have to go around the back to get to our door. That isn't happening. And she also wants us to stop using the garage door opener because she doesn't like the noise it makes when we do. That's obviously not happening. She's pissing off my girlfriend and scaring her kid. I have to calm them both down and get them inside while Karen is still yelling with a jabbing finger. Now, I'm an easygoing guy. I can let it roll off. But the girlfriend and kid didn't reserve that. I got them both to calm down. He needed ice cream, she needed a beer and smoke, and Karen needed to be taught a lesson. I go to put the cars and bikes away. It's during this that I can hear Karen through the garage ceiling on the phone with what I can only assume to be our landlord, dogging about how rude and insufferable we are. We scare her cat, really, and we keep running the garage door and it bothers her. She doesn't like it. We just have to go. And that's when the light bulb goes off. Both of my bikes are carbureted, and for the life of me, I can't remember the last time I had them adjusted. Since car washing was cut short, maybe I can do that instead and pull mine and the girlfriend's car out of the garage. I'm gonna need the space. Then I park the bike side by side, exhaust pipes facing into the garage. I break out the tools and start with the little one. She's a 2001 V-Star 1100 Classic. I named her Molly. Vance and the Heinz pipes, but they're still pretty loud. That is motorbike jargon I don't understand. I crank Molly up and wail on that throttle while I fine-tune the throttle body. Just ripping it as loud as she can, filling the garage with all of that noise, keeping that up for a few minutes. Then I let her rest a little. When I finally put Molly to bed, I can finally hear Karen stomping on the floor and yelling at me. I yell back, "Okay, Karen, just one more to go. Only a few minutes." Then I turn my attention to Black Betty. She's an '08 Vulcan Mean Streak Limited Edition. She's an 1800. She has pipes too, but the baffles may or may not have been drilled out. Before I can crank it up, I hear her calling what I assume is the LL and yelling that she doesn't care about the lease, she just wants us kicked out. She just won't stand for it. I didn't catch the rest of it as Betty was clearing her throat. I gave up the subterfuge and actually working on it and just held the throttle open for a moment. Then rest. Then throttle. Then rest. Kept that up until my own ears started ringing. Then put the vehicles away. She was still stomping on the floor and talking on the phone. I assume this was someone other than the LL because she's retelling the same story again. Also, did I mention that we're friends with the landlord? Yeah, so once I'm back inside, the girlfriend is on the phone with him, we tell our side, he laughs at my prank with the bike, then asks me not to do that anymore. We finish off the evening with some TV while Karen is still screaming. Her voice is wavering as though she might be angry crying. In the coming months, it only got worse, but in that moment, the most committed of meth heads could not match me for the endorphin rush I got from hearing her rant and squeal. A few days later, I'm out on my way to work. I leave at about 6 to make it in time to have breakfast at the desk before I log in at 7. I go around to the garage and Karen has left her car outside her garage and positioned it so I can't get my car out. I knock on her door and, of course, she doesn't answer. Bang on it a few more times and nothing. I even yell at the door, "Hey, Karen, you're blocking my car. I need to get out to work." This is clearly her petty revenge for the bikes, I'm sure. Good shot, Karen. Good one. Fortunately, it's a nice day, so I can just take one of them to work. The bike can fit around her car, but thanks to her, I wasn't going to have a fun time to enjoy my breakfast once I got there. That evening, I came home and her car was still there. So, instead of putting it back in the garage, I leave the bike parked behind her car, just at the edge of the street. Now, I know what you're thinking, but OP, what if she backs into it? And I was kind of hoping that was where it would go. See, I've got great insurance and an even better lawyer. But no, this is how petty she is. She calls the cops. Come knock on our door, push the bike over, go through the front yard. No, call the cops. The nice policeman informs me that I'm blocking her car from exiting. Yeah, that was kind of the point. I inform him that she started it. I felt like a kid saying that. And honestly, we would have called the police on her for this morning. But it seems juvenile and a waste of their time. Also, I had to get to work. Cops' response? Yes, but that's why we're here. That's just sad. Lets me know our species is doomed. Anyway, once I explain the whole thing, Mr. Policeman knocks on her door, addresses himself, and gets her to come outside. We explain the whole mess. Cop asks, is this true? She admits it, but can't produce a reason for it. Cop scolds both of us for being childish and to stop blocking the driveway. Says he doesn't want to have to come back out here to our residence again. Ha! Yeah, okay. That weekend, we go over to the neighbors for a few drinks. We're not being loud, no music, just a handful of us grilling out and drinking beers. Oh, and among the guests this evening is our landlord himself. Did I mention that we're good with him? So, anyway, sure enough, the nice policeman comes by. It's not the same officer this time, but the po-po nonetheless. He comes to the deck, flashlight in hand, says he's got a noise complaint call. Clearly, it was her. But what is rib-bustingly hilarious is that the officer said the noise complaint was placed by, wait for it, the landlord of the house. Yeah, no shit. Anyways, landlord steps forward and says, funny, I don't remember calling to complain about myself. Once again, we explain everything to the officer. He chuckles, asks us to keep it down, and leaves. After that, Mr. Landlord goes over to her unit. Of course she doesn't answer the door, but he speaks loud enough for her to hear, letting her know what she did wasn't cool. After that one, we tried to avoid one another. There would be minor like UPS package is dropped for her, we'd find it on our side and move it over. Later on, we'd hear through the door, keep your hands off my stuff. Or other headaches that would make us wish her cats would turn on her. A few weeks later, I'd gotten a promotion at work, so we threw a party. Sure enough, the cops were called again. This one was not placed by the landlord, but he was still there. And he yells over at the door, hey Karen, this is getting old. Come Halloween, I decorated the yard. I had heard from multiple neighbors of ours that their children were frightened of my front yard come Halloween. By this point, I should have guessed, though, that the lines were being drawn with Karen, figuratively and literally. I had to move some of my decorations, and that includes the 15-foot ghost on the roof of the unit. I had to move it all the way over onto my side. So, come Halloween night, we took my girlfriend's son out trick-or-treating, and literally every kid we saw, we told them to go by her place. She had the good candy, and lots of it. But she is old and hard of hearing, so you'll have to bang the door pretty hard. No, she won't mind, she's a sweet lady. Now, I realized this was also mean to the kids who went to her door, but they were each a worthy sacrifice on the altar of petty revenge. And there was an update. Final season, it's been about 10 plus months now. The cops hadn't had to come back out and no one had been cussed out in a while. One evening, we hear a splatter coming from the kitchen. Go in and find the pipe had busted underneath the sink and spraying. I quickly go out to the main and close it, but because this is a duplex, I've cut off water to her side as well. She's not home yet, so we call our buddy the landlord. He comes and addresses the issue. Small part to fix it, needs to run to Home Depot. Be right back. Meanwhile, I type up a note for Karen's door. I let her know we had a leak, had to shut off the water, but it should be fixed within an hour or two. Even thanked her for her understanding. While he is gone, we clean up the water. It was a lot. Then, before he returns, we hear the splatter again. At first, I'm a little confused. I know I turned it off, but then it clicks. I go outside and there's Karen holding a pipe wrench. Hey, didn't you see my note? Yes, but my cats need water. Yes, but now you're flooding our unit. I need water. My girlfriend comes out and goes off shouting, calling her a dog. Next door neighbors hear and come out. It's a show now. I go get my wrench to close the main valve again, but she won't move out of the way. She's literally blocking me. I half expect her to take the wrench to my head, so I back off. Sure enough, landlord arrives at the show. Hey, we left her note. She ignored it and started the water again. Wait, she what? Then he turns to light into her, cussing her out. I take advantage of her distraction to go kill the water again, but at this point the damage is done. It's been running long enough that the carpets are soaked and the water is pouring out the front door. Meanwhile, landlord is still yelling at her. All right, Karen, that's enough. You're out of here. This is your 30-day notice. Bullshit, I already signed the next year's lease. But I haven't signed it yet. It's worthless. Tear it up, and I'm taking your deposit to pay for their damages. She melts. But I don't have anywhere else to go. She continues to argue and cry about her deposit. She'll need that for her next apartment. She can't afford to move. She threatens small claims court to get it back. The argument rages on while I take girlfriend and son to go get packed. We can't stay here tonight. We spend the next couple of nights at a hotel while the carpets were redone. He bought the beer and ribs for the next barbecue. Few more weeks go by, and without so much as a peep from her, one day we come home and she's gone. Porch, garage, and apartment all cleaned out. I'm almost disappointed she didn't say goodbye. Holy, that was a long story, but definitely a different one at that. Anywho, I hope to see you in the next video, and until then, have a good one.